Hi, folks. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to this new episode of the RiseUp Radio. And today I'm joined by Katie Greenwood. Katie is an award-winning HR leader with over 20 years of experience in talent management and leadership development. So, Katie, welcome to this episode of the RiseUp Radio.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Folks, I've been chatting with Katie for a long time now, and her ideas are really, really impressive, and we couldn't resist ourselves but to bring her on the show. And today we're going to be talking about building a winning L&D strategy with Katie. But before we dig into that, let's get to know her a little bit. So, Katie, in all my interactions, I've seen a passion in you, passion to unlock potential and build future ready leaders, right?
Yeah.
So, what fuels
Yes.
that passion?
Oh my goodness. I really believe learning and development is in my blood. I love this work and I started this work when I was in college. So when I was at Northeastern,
Wow.
I started years and years ago realizing like this work really makes a real difference, right? I've been
Mm,
watching for over 20 years helping people grow, but also align their potential and really unlock it and look at that between that and the organizational needs. And that's how lasting change really happens, right? It's about
mm,
creating fresh, future focused solutions that really help transform individuals and really
mm.
build strong cultures that drive real results. And how helping other
Mm.
people succeed is
Yeah.
really what makes this work so rewarding for me.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
starting in college is really, really
Yes,
awesome,
yes, I
right?
was on co-op, if any, go Huskies, right? So I started
So,
the Gillette company in my first learning and development role, and I could never be so grateful for such an opportunity. And it just
mhm.
kind of started from there.
Awesome. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
I'm really excited to, jump into it right away. But, before I jump into, discussing how do you create a winning L&D strategy, I have a very burning question before that, right?
Oh,
Having
please
been a
go for
prac
it.
Yeah, having been a practitioner for such a long time, I'm sure you would have seen a lot of organizations, some designing structured L&D programs and others almost winging their L&D strategy, right?
Oh,
Yeah, there's
absolutely.
nothing wrong with winging L&D strategy, but why is it important for organizations to start thinking in a more structured manner and stop winging as they go on?
That's a really great question because, I started this in the 90s not knowing, anything about this. And now
Hmm,
watching people either wing it or not wing it, I've learned really winging an L&D strategy is kind of like setting off on a road trip without a map or GPS, right? You may get somewhere, but it's unlikely where you need to go and you're going to follow a
Yeah.
lot of detours. Now, that's not
Hmm,
always wrong and you learn a lot, but I found a
hmm,
structured approach, on the other hand, really ensures that your learning programs are going to be intentional, right? They're aligned
yeah.
with the business goals. And those are the ones that are going to be capable of delivering the measurable impact that your business really needs without kind of
Hmm.
wasting time and money.
Yeah. So in
Yeah,
essence, structured equals to strategic, right? If that's correct,
100%.
can we break down what's a structured approach and why does it matter more and why should organizations start thinking about it?
Absolutely. So, if you think about this, I want you to think about making sure your learning strategy aligns with your business goals. Like, if you're
Hmm.
wanting to increase revenue or retain employees or drive innovation, your strategy needs to focus specifically on that. I want you to also
Hmm.
think about using your resources wisely. Time and money
Always.
aren't unlimited. I mean, I'm still looking for the magic pot of gold. So, when everybody finds it, let me know. But the reality is, you know, a clear plan is going to help you avoid wasting both time and money on programs that don't matter. Okay. So
Hmm.
when you're
Hmm.
thinking about just getting something off the shelf, something very
Hmm.
generic, you want to be careful with that because if you're not focused on building specific skills with your leadership and your managers, you're
Hmm.
not going to necessarily be able to tackle today's challenges. So you want to be very
Hmm.
clear with what you're doing, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's really important.
Hmm.
Another thing I want you to
Uh,
think about is
sorry.
no, go for it.
No, no, no. Complete your thought. Sorry, my
Oh,
bad.
no, it's okay. My brain just, this is why my brain just goes. And it's important when it goes, if you have to set some clear metrics, right? You want to
Yeah,
set clear metrics and milestones because that's the thing. You go and you get really excited. But if you don't have something to measure along the
correct,
way, you're not going to
correct.
know if you're, actually hitting those customer satisfaction numbers or
Hmm,
your productivity is going up or making or
hmm,
saving money. To
hmm,
ensure that you're doing this right, you need to track progress and show the value of an L&D program, or else it's going to seem, really fluffy. The last thing I want you
hmm,
to think about is L&D structure is for the employees. We need to keep employees engaged. We need them to stay. We need
hmm.
people investing in their growth builds your business's future. When they see
Yeah.
that clear learning path for them, it's going to align to their career goals and it's going to boost their
Hmm,
commitment. They're going to see that, oh, this is for me, this pathway is for me. They're going to say it's not just training, which tends to be a bad word, right? People go,
hmm.
oh, training.
Always.
Instead, you're going to say, I want to help you succeed. And a
Hmm.
valued employee will go the extra mile and will deliver those
Correct,
real results for you if
correct.
you're able to show that value to them.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
in a nutshell, just to summarize the last point, right? You're able to show value. What's in it for me as a participant? Or why should I care about this
Oh,
piece
yeah.
of training, right? That you're delivering. Well, on the flip side, organizations that continue to wing it, what are they losing on?
Well, when you do wing it, okay, and that is an option for people, you do have some risks, right? You're going to
Hmm.
risk the misaligned programs, you're going to risk wasting your critical resources, and you're going to end up with disengaged employees saying like
Hmm.
this wasn't even worth my time or money, why are they doing this, and people get kind of
Yeah.
upset. Even worse, what really happens is those critical skill gaps, those holes that remain unaddressed of like, I
Hmm.
need this person to have these skills, is going to
Hmm.
leave your organization vulnerable to when the market changes or competition comes in. They may
Hmm.
stay or they may leave if you don't
Hmm.
really have that person really connected and rooted in
Yeah.
that strategy. You
Makes
want to think
sense.
about,
Well,
yeah, absolutely.
hmm.
I go back to it. It's not a luxury. I think that
Hmm.
structure is a business necessity. Every
Hmm.
hour, every dollar, it matters. Okay. We
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
really transform learning from a checkbox activity. That's what I've learned in the 20 plus years. People think of it checkbox rather than a driver where people really
Yeah.
see I can be growing, I can have impact. So, really, I think the question isn't why should we structure our strategy, but it's can we afford not to,
Hmm.
is where I want you to really think about it.
No, that's a very important point, Katie, that you mentioned. And most of the times trainings remain a checkbox activity for the organizers as well as for the people who are consuming it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The nutshell, the core question then I have is, what does it entail to build a winning L&D strategy? So let's get down to the nuts and bolts of it, right?
Let's
So
let's
what are
do
some of
it.
the basic pillars of an L&D strategy if someone is just getting started?
I want you to keep it simple, right? So translating organizational goals into learning goals is going to be the
Hmm.
cornerstone of really making sure it's impactful. You want to
Hmm.
ensure that every learning initiative directly supports the business priorities and has that clear link between the investment and the outcome. So, a
Hmm.
practical approach is how I want everybody to root themselves, right? Start
Hmm.
with the end
Hmm.
in mind. You want to identify what are the specific business outcomes you're aiming to achieve. I really think the
Hmm.
right question to ask yourself is what does success look like in our organization, and really
Hmm.
define it and then work backwards. You
Hmm.
want to figure this out by engaging your stakeholders early. Work with your
Hmm.
leaders, work with your managers, work with your employees to identify those skill gaps and align the learning goals with those business needs. You want to ask a lot of open-ended questions, stay curious. You want to build trust because you want to make sure it's their program, not our program, right? Because
Yeah.
managers are going to be able to point out bottlenecks and employees are going to share their daily challenges or
Hmm.
gripes of what might
Hmm.
not be working. And if we're not listening and getting curious, we're going to
Hmm.
miss out on uncovering the real priorities.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah. So the other thing is I recommend really focusing on making learning goals specific and measurable. Using
Hmm.
a SMART goal template can really
Hmm.
help set those goals. And we've included a template after this podcast for everybody to use. You want to think about that. Clear goals brings focus, and it also brings accountability and real results. People need to know what they're doing and what their expectations are. They
Hmm.
align efforts with outcomes. Then you can track the progress, and then you can actually see the value of learning. By tying
Yeah.
those metrics together, you're going to make learning much more measurable, much more meaningful, and actually watch the direct driver of that to organizational growth.
Hmm.
Um, and last but not least, we got to talk about money. All right. This is the hard part. People kind of think of
Yeah.
it as an afterthought. I want you to think about evaluating your budget in the early stages. Don't wait until the end to think about this, right? Build
Hmm.
it into your plan from the start. You want to work with your controllers, you want to work with your managers to really understand what are the budgets and success metrics really needed so that training is
Hmm.
realistic, it's cost effective, and it's
Yeah.
impactful. Great training matters, but it only matters if there's results at the end.
Always, always,
Mm-hmm.
always, right? Cool. So let's start looking at each one of them now, right? Because I really, really want to dig deep here, right? I'm not
I
just
love it.
gonna
Let's
remain
peel
at
back the
surface level.
onion.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So when you're starting to look at translating an organization's goal into learning goals, right? How do you look at it? How do you get started? So can you take us through your process and how you would do it?
Absolutely. So once you have kind of that data and that intel from your managers and whatnot, you want to look at every learning initiative to be targeted. It needs to be
Hmm.
actionable and it needs to really deliver some impact.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
not, people will call it fluffy. That is a term I've
Hmm.
heard for 20 plus years. Oh, the fluffy stuff. This is not
Yeah.
fluffy. We need to
Yeah.
really think about and turn this around to make every training effort count and that it's strategic. So start by getting
True.
curious, right? Really dive into your organizational key objectives. Once you
Hmm.
understand truly from your stakeholders what they need, you really
Hmm.
need to listen and start to tie them back to business outcomes and KPIs.
Hmm.
KPIs are something that are so important, key performance indicators that are going to ensure the alignment of the business priorities. We need people to
Yeah.
be able to get their goals. Okay. So this
Yeah.
is only happens when skills and competencies for your team, you start to really develop them for those actual needs. And
Hmm.
the fun quote I always like to say is what gets measured gets done.
Always.
The simple
Always.
truth is that when you define these clear metrics, you start to think about more of the accountability and focus, and it doesn't
Hmm.
become an afterthought.
Yeah.
And that's really taking and turning goals into action plans. And
Hmm.
when we start to take action, you start to see real results. And that's where people take
Hmm.
a lot of pride and get really excited
Hmm.
about it. And then it becomes,
Hmm.
again, not fluffy, it becomes
Yep.
strategic and they want to do it more.
Right. Absolutely. Katie, I'm going to go back to one of the initial points that you mentioned. After aligning the organizational goals to learning goals, it's important to make them smart, right? Now,
Yes.
SMART is a very well-known framework. We all know that, right? But I'm going to
Yep.
get into a workshop mode now, right?
I
Shall
love
we
it.
take a stab at peeling the SMART framework once and looking at how does a learning goal look like in a smart avatar, I would say? What do you think?
Oh, I love that. No, that's perfect. Let's talk about this. So, again,
Cool.
I've used SMART Goal formula for 20 years. It's simple. It really provides a clear direction, accountability, and measurable outcomes, and that's what helps
Hmm.
gets us focused and aligned with business priorities. And then we're
Hmm.
really capable of delivering tangible results. Okay. Bottom
Hmm.
line is
Hmm.
employees should not be guessing about
Hmm.
what they're doing and how they're expected to do it. So
Yeah.
working with people is really critical. So first thing I
Hmm.
want you to do is get really specific. You want to write
Hmm.
down what exactly needs to happen, who's involved, and why it's important. You want
Hmm.
to be able
Hmm.
to measure it. You want to decide how success will be tracked. And again, we're going back to use your metrics, use your KPIs.
Yep.
What are those measurable indicators that are going to show us that movement?
Yep.
The next thing is it achievable? right? Confirm
Hmm.
that the goal is realistic and that this person is going to have the available resources and time to actually execute on it. And it's
Hmm.
also connected to the relevancy of connecting the goal to the broader organizational priority. If you realize this is not a priority today, then you may want to pivot and try another goal.
Hmm.
So don't be
Hmm.
afraid to
Hmm.
pivot along the way. And last but not
Hmm.
least, is put a timestamp on it. Okay.
Hmm.
Set a clear deadline for delivery, for completion, so that there is an absolute clear deadline to get to done. All right.
Hmm. Hmm.
We have
Hmm.
included a SMART goal template for all of us to practice using. But I have a question for you. Can you share with me an example of one of your specific organizational goals, and I'll help
Oh,
you
okay.
apply the formula. So, yeah, what are your
Cool.
thoughts?
So we're going to take an organizational goal and transform into a learning goal, right? Cool. So
That
let's
sounds
think
good. Yeah, what would
about,
you like?
let's say, increasing the customer satisfaction by 15% by the end of the year, which is
All right.
2025. So let's say we're starting in January 2025 and we'll finish by December 2025. And the objective
Yep.
is to increase the customer satisfaction by 15%, which you're measuring through the NPS measurement, right?
Yeah, I like that a lot, right? Oftentimes goals, they could be an entire year. This is a
Hmm.
perfect one. So we want to get
Hmm.
specific. Let's break it down. Let's get
Hmm.
specific. So you're going to want to train all your customer service reps in advanced
Hmm.
communication, conflict
Hmm.
resolution skills, other
Hmm.
areas
Hmm.
where you kind of see where they're going to have the most impact. You want to sit
Hmm.
down and say to yourself, what are the customer satisfaction scores today? And
Hmm.
where do you want them to increase to? So,
Hmm.
where are your customer service scores today? What
Hmm.
percentage?
Let's say 70%.
Okay. So, realistically, you want to move that needle 70% to say 80% or
Yeah,
85%. And you want to
85%.
be very, very clear on what that is. So that way,
Hmm.
over the course of the year, you can start to track that in your
Hmm.
learning management system, in your customer
Hmm.
satisfaction scores. You want
Hmm.
to make sure this goal is achievable. Okay. You
Hmm.
want to
Hmm.
say to yourself, okay, what am I going to do to ensure these folks can get what they need? So I would
Hmm.
recommend implementing a 12-week training program with role-playing scenarios, real-time feedback
Hmm.
sessions, coaching sessions, so that they have a chance over time to really develop this skill. Now, this is the
Yeah.
key part. You need to ensure you're telling the relevance to that employee. Why is it
Hmm.
important, right? You mentioned
Hmm.
earlier, what's in it for me?
What's in it for
This
them?
training will directly support our company priorities of improving customer retention and loyalty.
Hmm.
And potentially, if they're customer service reps, it also may be a part of their how they make their commission, right? So
Yeah.
putting the relevance in there is really critical. And then you want to say, okay, how often are we going to focus on ensuring we get there? So the training
Hmm.
program will launch Q1. Our
Hmm.
satisfaction scores will be tracked quarterly, and we want to achieve 15% increase by the year end. So let's put
Hmm.
it all together. That seems like a lot
Hmm.
of parts, but it's actually
Yep.
really tiny once you get it through. So here's my
Hmm.
recommendation. By
Hmm.
December 31st, we will increase customer satisfaction scores by 15% through a
Hmm.
targeted training program for all customer service reps on an
Hmm.
advanced communication and conflict resolution. And we will measure it by post training surveys and customer satisfaction scores. And that's it.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
Now,
Cool.
don't be afraid as you go along. If you need to tweak the goal a little bit, tweak the goal a little
Always.
bit. Don't be afraid to do that, friends, because we don't want to keep things static or stagnant. As changes happen, we want to
Yeah.
ensure our priorities are happening, but just go back to that formula of keeping it smart.
Yeah, awesome. And we're gonna come to reevaluating goals as well. So I think let's park that thought. But before we go there, Katie, I think next step. What is the next step? We have our goal. We have aligned it to the organization's goal. I am
Yep.
assuming the next step is a skill gap analysis. What do you think?
It is. A skill gap analysis really is going to help align your team with business goals. It's going to identify the difference between the current skills that the person needs and what they need to actually achieve the goal.
Hmm.
We've created a downloadable template to really simplify this process. So as you're going through, please feel free to use this. It's going to help you focus on critical skills. It's going to help you save costs, and it will help you boost engagement because again, if we tackle the right skills that are the right priorities, it's not going to be seen as fluffy, and your
Hmm.
employees are going to be able to deliver on that measurable ROI, right? It's
Yeah.
a very powerful strategic tool, and there's really simple ways to kind of break down the steps, if you will.
Correct. Correct. Right. Shall we go through the steps, Katie?
Absolutely. I think it's really important. And please taking a look, everybody, at using this step by step. First thing I
Hmm.
want you to do is define your organization's goals and needs. We
Hmm.
want to align the skill gap analysis with your strategic objectives. You can do this by identifying upcoming projects, technologies, or even the market demands driving the need for those specific skills.
Hmm. So if I were to take an example, so let's say the goal is to embark on a massive digital transformation for a mid-sized organization, you might need extensive skills around data analytics, automation, or even AI, given the theme that's going on at the moment, right?
Absolutely. That's exactly it. So working with your L&D practitioner or whatnot and
Hmm.
the manager of the organization, this is a partnership, right? So we're not
Yeah.
doing this in a bubble. We want to work together.
Yeah.
And with
Right.
with each other, right? We want to really identify the key roles so that are going to need to be required to achieve these
Hmm.
goals. So you
Hmm.
can look to things like job descriptions, performance reviews, benchmarks, competency frameworks. A lot of this
Yeah.
data will help you pinpoint what's needed.
So
Hmm.
again, if I were to take an example here, right? So let's say a marketing manager, for them, the essential skills would include being more data driven, leveraging maybe AI for content creation and being
Yes.
more analytics driven in terms of making decisions and reporting towards the management, right? So in essence, it is digital transformation, but it would look very different role to role and function to function. So we need to translate that big, direction into smaller sub directions depending on roles and smaller areas of work, isn't it?
I completely agree. If we hone in on these priorities, you're going to really get targeted on your efforts where they're going to make the greatest impact. Using a
Hmm.
marketing manager, that's a perfect example of, even if 5 years back, 3 years back, every year now, everything kind of
Yeah.
changes. And AI and technology and everything, as we've talked about so much, is changing the game. And people really need to understand and not be scared of it, but really
Hmm.
be able to harness it, embrace it, and
Yeah.
learn the skills that they need to really capitalize on this future of work, right? So makes a
Correct.
lot of sense.
Hmm.
Um, then I would take, right? I would look to say, okay, what's next? We want to assess this current skill levels that you have going on, right? I want you
Hmm.
to look at your team's current skills. Now, this is
Hmm.
something that is done, it's keep it very pragmatic, but also keep it
Hmm.
very honest because we
Hmm.
want to use, look at self assessments, look at 360s, look at survey. But if you're honest in your performance reviews and what the project
Yeah.
results are saying, you can use
Yeah.
those as a benchmark. And those
Yeah.
are really important if you're honest. And I like to call it
Hmm.
clean data. If there's clean
Hmm.
data there for you, you're going to be able to much quicker create a straightforward
Yeah.
approach. It's going to give you a clear
Right.
picture.
Right. And Katie, I've always found keeping things simple here, right? Having a simple scale of, let's say, 1 to 5 has typically worked for me, where 1 is like a novice level, 5 is an expert level. What do you
Yeah.
think about that?
I completely agree. I love the Likert scale. The 1 to 5 always has worked for
Hmm.
me. It identifies strengths, it identifies gaps. It also, I love the data behind it, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes, and that's what I like to put data like the 1 through 5 behind it. So, like, especially on a performance
Correct.
review, where I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many times people would come into me when I was running performance reviews. Say, Katie, I only got a 3. I only got a 3. I'm like, what does a 3 even mean to you? They're like,
Correct.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
Right. And so in that was such a learning lesson for me about 10
Yeah.
years ago when I realized people were so focused on the number that they didn't
Yeah.
really understand the skills that they needed, right? And
Correct.
and they were so worried about that number rather than saying, am I skilled enough? Am I capable enough to do the job I'm being asked to do today? But also
Correct.
succeed in the future, which is the scary
Hmm.
part. So that's the
Yeah.
real important part we want to think about. We want to identify those gaps between the current skills and the future needs, right? If we
Hmm.
compare
Hmm.
the required skills for each role with the existing skill levels in your workforce,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
going to be able to target in, and we're going to be able to figure out exactly what we need to focus on in regards to
Hmm.
learning and development so we don't waste time and money.
Hmm. Hmm. And
Yeah.
this is where bottom-up analysis is going to come in, right? For example,
Mhm.
let's say if only 20% of the product engineering team knows advanced AI modeling, whereas for our objectives we need at least 50% of them to know, then that becomes like a clear priority for the organization to invest in it, right?
Exactly. And this also becomes your business case, right? If we're sitting
Hmm.
there
Hmm.
going and asking for an investment with our
Absolutely.
C-suite, and we're going to our CFO and saying, this is why we need it, we really need to be able
Hmm.
to take the data and create that story.
Hmm.
Because if we're
Hmm.
really focusing on those skills that deliver the greatest business impact, now we're
Correct.
really focusing on making that business case about really sense of urgency, why it's really important, how often we're
Yeah.
going to use it. And the other part is if we don't prioritize this, then we're not going to be able to necessarily achieve. It's more of a guessing game. So we want to
Correct.
ensure that each resource, and I keep coming back to this, is
Hmm.
targeted and we're creating the greatest value at that time. And
Hmm.
again, pivot as needed, but the more we focus on strategy up front, the less we're going to have to do like in
Hmm.
the end, right? So,
Yep. Yep.
mhm.
Absolutely. And I think this is where alignment goes a long way, right? So if your priorities are aligned with the organization's priorities, then it becomes much more easier to, make your case for investment, isn't it?
Exactly. Once you have this case,
Hmm.
then you want to create targeted solutions.
Correct.
Often people don't think about that. They just want to go right to the solution without spending this time. Once you get
Hmm.
to this place, you're going to be able to design a tailored learning
Yep.
program
Yeah.
using the mix of methods like on the job training or e learning,
Hmm.
workshops, certifications. There's tons of fun
Correct.
stuff. This is where I
Correct.
get passionate, right? So that
Yep.
you're focused in ensuring that you're going to really deliver those results and people are
Yeah.
going to see the needle moving rather than just saying, oh, I have training today. Oh, it's an hour, 2 hours. Those times have to go because that's a waste of time and it becomes an event. So we want to make sure
Correct.
we're nailing it as quickly as possible.
Correct. So just going back to our example that we were taking, right? So if customer satisfaction is one of the key objectives for the organization, then the managers and the leaders must be trained for conflict resolution as a priority, isn't it?
Absolutely. Not none of this thing called business is not easy, right? Conflict resolution is such a is a skill that needs to be focused. But yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, I would agree.
Hmm.
Because this isn't just about improvement, it's about keeping
Yeah.
your organization competitive and
Right.
agile and ready for the future. This future is changing so fast and it's
Hmm.
incredible. It's so important that we invest in our people in
Hmm.
the most strategic way possible.
Hmm. Hmm. Cool, awesome. So we've already discussed, creating a goal. We have discussed, overarching framework. Now let's get down to designing and delivering content, right? Designing and delivering not content but learning solution primarily. Most
Yes,
professionals get overwhelmed with this process because it takes a lot of work, isn't it?
it
What is the
does.
best and simplest way to get started? Basically, how can we do it?
Absolutely. It is seriously designing learning solutions can feel so overwhelming because as an L&D practitioner, you sit down and you go, okay, now I have a plan, right?
Hmm.
Now what do I do with this plan? Because it becomes you have to be start from the beginning. So
Yeah.
taking those learning goals, taking those business needs, focusing on priorities, you then want to break it down into steps. All right.
Hmm.
This is super critical. I love project management. So I like to really take things step by step. Think of it like building a house. All right. You want
Hmm.
to start with your foundation, which is your
Hmm.
business goals.
Hmm.
Then you want to use the right tools. So maybe your hammer is data and maybe your wrench is insights. And then you want
Hmm.
to align the team. You want to then also use pilot programs. These are key.
Hmm.
I love a good pilot program because then you're able to test and gather feedback and refine and pivot as needed. You can
Hmm.
focus on creating relevant, engaging learning with measurable outcomes. And for today's hybrid workforce, combining on demand digital learning with live sessions for flexibility and inclusivity is critical. We need to meet, those
Hmm.
are our customers. So we need to meet them where they are. So that strategic approach really turns learning into a structured process and they can start to
Yeah.
see the real results as we go along.
Right, right. And I think one of the critical aspects in this entire cog, in this entire wheel, is, who your stakeholders are and are you meeting their expectations or not, right? And
Yeah.
although folks, I'm not gonna dig really deep into stakeholders because we're doing multiple sessions with Katie, and one of the sessions is all about stakeholders. So I'm gonna hold my horses and we'll discuss more about stakeholders, but I can't leave that topic today, right? I have to touch upon it, Katie. So, what are the key
I get it.
players in defining an L&D strategy? Who are the key
All right.
players?
Yeah, I want you to think of managing your stakeholders in your L&D strategy like making a big sale. All right.
Hmm.
Everyone plays an important role, and success comes down to understanding their needs and getting them all on the same page. So,
Hmm.
your first customer is your learner. Okay.
Hmm.
Employees are the ones who directly benefit from your training programs. If
Yeah.
they don't see how it helps them or makes their life easier, they won't engage and they'll say it's fluffy.
Yep.
That's our word of the day, my friend. And without their buy-in, even the best program won't deliver results, and
Correct.
we just
Correct.
can't have that, right? Your next person in your sale is your C-suite. These are your buyers, okay?
Yep.
Your top execs hold the budget and care most about the return on investment. They want to
Hmm.
see how L&D ties to the big picture goals, like how is this going to boost productivity? How is this going to
Correct.
cut turnover? How is this going to improve customer satisfaction? We need to
Hmm.
show them how the programs will deliver these measurable results and you'll win their support, and also including follow up all the time with data driven executive summaries. We'll go into that in the next section, in
It's
another
their
section.
KPIs, right? I mean, department heads,
It's
their
their
KPIs
KPIs,
that
it's their bonus, right?
absolutely
So we
right.
need
Right.
to ensure that we're showing them the numbers and telling them that
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Your last customer is your department heads. They're going to be your influencers. Okay. Your
Yeah.
managers are going to have their fingers on the pulse of their team. That mid level manager, you want to be able to hear and listen. They know
Hmm.
the pain points. Okay.
Correct.
And they have a big say in how learning and
Hmm.
development is viewed. If
Hmm.
they see values in your programs, they will champion them. And if
Correct.
they don't, adoption could stall even before it
Zero.
even starts. Is
Yeah.
zero. And then suddenly you see less engagement. Oh, sorry, I can't make it. I have another meeting type of
Yeah.
scenario.
Yeah.
And then you realize engagement is lost. And then you've lost that investment. We
Hmm.
need to treat learners as customers. Okay.
Hmm.
Our stakeholders are our partners, and we need to
Hmm.
align this strategy so that we can get their full support and their
Yeah.
buy-in. All right. This is how we're
Yeah.
going to drive momentum. So, my recommendation: speak their language, show them the
Yep.
value, and turn them
Hmm.
into passionate advocates and champions of yours. And it becomes a lot of fun, and it becomes you're their
Yeah.
partner. Yeah, it's I
So,
love working with my stakeholders.
right. So, folks, in essence, it's all about always be selling, right? The way salespeople do.
Always.
So, always keep thinking what's in it for them, right? Answer what's in it for them, and they'll be on your side. So, you need to be on their side so that they can be on your side, in essence.
Yes, agreed. This is a partnership. Oftentimes, I
Correct.
think like human resources, learning and development. Over the years, it's their our role. It's we have a seat at the table. We need to
Yeah.
ensure
Yeah.
we're a trusted advisor that we
Correct.
understand their business. So another big piece is know their business, know their operations.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to be an expert, but you need to
Yeah.
be a thought leader and be as curious as possible and
Yeah.
almost be a part of their team so that they call
Hmm.
upon you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think I'm towards the end of my questions, and I have one last question for you,
Okay.
right? And
Mhm.
like any structured process, any structured process can't remain static. It has to
Yeah,
evolve. It has
totally.
to constantly look, are we in the right direction? Are we moving in the right direction or not, right? And I think that's really critical in an L&D strategy as well, which is how do we keep evaluating it and how do we keep changing it by taking the feedback in. So, what are your thoughts?
Feedback is critical. It is the
Hmm.
compass for your L&D strategy. Keeping it aligned with business goals, driving success, feedback, good, bad, and indifferent. Okay. You want to gather it. You want to gather post training insights. You want to track those metrics like productivity, retention, compare
Hmm.
pre and post training results. That data is going to tell a story. I also like using focus groups with employees and
Hmm.
managers to refine programs and explore new formats like hybrid learning and things like that.
Yeah.
I love this because also oftentimes our employees have come from other organizations that have great ideas that have worked for them. Why not
Hmm.
try to like figure out how do we infuse it here? Like the more we're listening, the more we're curious. A strong
Right.
feedback will ensure your strategy always stays dynamic. People
Hmm.
see
Hmm.
the impact, and they also, your organization and your C suite starts to see delivering that lasting success that we need to really grow and keep the train on the track. So
Absolutely. And that's the most important piece, isn't it?
absolutely.
Right. Awesome. Well, there you have it, folks. So, with this, we are coming to an end for this session. So, thank you so much, Katie, for taking on the time
Oh, you're
today.
welcome.
And
Thank you.
I love the session. I think there's some really practical insights packed for organizations who are just starting to get started with, designing an L&D strategy. It's not rocket science. You just need a more structured process. You can continue to wing it, but yeah, there's a better world out there, right? So
I
with
couldn't
little
agree
work, you can
more.
actually get there. So why not get started? Cool. So
Thank you
folks,
so much.
yeah, we have more sessions lined up with Katie, and we're going to be doing more fun stuff. So watch out for that. But in today's session, we discussed two templates, a SMART goal template and a skill gap analysis. So you can find them down in the description below. Do check them out and let us know how you find them. And don't forget to connect with either me or Katie on LinkedIn. We are very friendly folks, and we'll definitely welcome you and have a happy chat with you. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you
And
so
take
much.
care.
Looking forward to next session.